New York City and surrounding suburbs face the unthinkable. According to Bloomberg News, service on city buses and subways could be reduced by 40%. Commuter trains by 50%. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority says they're going to be forced to raise fares and tolls and cut 9,000 jobs. Now, for the 15 million people who depend on New York's mass transit, this is a disaster. Bloomberg calls it a doomsday scenario. They predict that if these cuts happen, the economic fallout will continue even after the pandemic is over. The entire region will suffer, and the suffering could last for years. New York's economy could take a $65 billion hit. Total job losses could be north of 450,000. Now, this adds up to a huge, steaming pile of bad news for the Northeast, but there is a solution that would stop this dead in its tracks. If the federal government just steps in with a bunch of cash, none of this bad stuff will happen. So New York transportation bosses are begging and pleading. They want a measly $12 billion from the federal treasury. It would save the buses, save the subways, save the commuter trains, the jobs, the economy. Then nobody can blame Governor Cuomo or the mayor de Blasio or the Democrat Party for closing down New York to play political games. That's their objective. I hope it doesn't happen. It's the best decision that you've made all day. The decision to tune in to this program right here, right now, is the best decision that you make. Congratulations. It's great to have you here with us. The best decision I made today was to show up. After I woke up, and thank God that I did, I then got in here. And we are revved and ready to go. Broadcast excellence, 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. We are waiting the beginning of a press conference. The Trump campaign legal team is going to do a press conference and give us an update on where things stand, the electoral challenges that they are mounting. It will come from Washington. Our microphones are there. Our cameras are there, even though we are a radio network. We are fully covered. Until that begins, I want to take you back to 2015 and 2016 and to me on this program. Do you remember me making a prediction about Barack Obama that I didn't think when I learned that he was going to remain in Washington? Ex-presidents don't do that. They leave for whatever reason. And there are a number of reasons. Most ex-presidents adopt the rules of decorum, which say, my presidency is over, there's a new one beginning, and I'm not part of it, and I'm out of here. You leave the presidency and a new phase of your life begins. You begin to put together the ingredients for your library, a massage parlor if you're Bill Clinton, or you go play golf, or you do whatever you do. But you get out of Dodge. Washington is not the home of most presidents, and they want to go back home. They want to go back to their home states, their home cities. They want to go back to their friends and so forth that constituted their life before they became president. And that's been the standard. When I saw that Barack Hussein Obama was going to stay, I made a prediction to you. I said, there's one reason this guy is staying. This guy is going to do everything he can to undermine the incoming president, in this case, Trump. He's going to go on, this is what I said, he's going to go on television every time the new president, I made this prediction before we had a new president. I made the prediction during the Republican primaries before we knew that Trump had even won the nomination, and certainly before we knew that Trump had been elected. I predicted that Obama would be among the first presidents ever, and that he would have the support of the media, that he would go on television anytime there was any effort made to change or unravel any aspect of the Obama agenda, that he would be on TV ripping the new president for doing it and trying to arouse, if you will, national opposition among the population for the new president. In other words, I predicted Barack Obama would be attempting in public to undermine the new president. in an effort to save his agenda. Well, that didn't happen, so I thought, okay, I was wrong. I didn't get that right. I did not know how right I was. The only thing I was wrong about was Obama didn't do it publicly. He didn't go on television every time something happened that he needed to defend or protect or unravel. But he was active. It was all. These past 4 years have all been about Obama. Okay, we got a jip now. The press conference just started. I hate to interrupt myself at that point, but we have to. Here's Rudy Giuliani kicking off the press conference. We'll see how long we stick with this.
Follow me, and we will present, in brief, the evidence that we've collected over the last, I guess it is 2 weeks. Also, Joseph Genever, Victoria Tenzing are here with me. There are a lot more lawyers working on this, but we're the senior lawyers, and Boris Epstein. So, I guess the best way to describe this is when we began our representation of the president, we certainly were confronted with a very anomalous set of results. The president way ahead on election night. 700,000 or 800,000 in Pennsylvania. Somehow he lost Pennsylvania. We have statisticians willing to testify that that's almost statistically impossible to have happened in the period of time that it happened. But, of course, that's just speculation. As we started investigating, both our investigations and the very patriotic and brave American citizens that have come forward are extraordinary. Extraordinary number of people, extraordinary number of witnesses. And what emerged very quickly is there's not a singular voter fraud in one state. This pattern repeats itself in a number of states. Almost exactly the same pattern, which to any experienced investigator, prosecutor, would suggest that there was a plan from a centralized place to execute these various acts of voter fraud, specifically focused on big cities, and specifically focused on, as you would imagine, big cities controlled by Democrats.
Right, and I think
particularly focused on big cities that have a long history of corruption. The number of voter fraud cases in Philadelphia could fill a library. Just a few weeks ago, there was a conviction for voter fraud, and 2 weeks before that. And I've often said, I guess sarcastically, but it's true, the only surprise I would have found in this is if Philadelphia hadn't cheated in this election. Because for the last 60 years, they've cheated in just about every single election. You could say the same thing about Detroit. Each one of these cities are cities that are controlled by Democrats, which means they can get away with anything they want to do. It means they have a certain degree of control over, certainly control the election board completely, and they control law enforcement. And unfortunately, they have some friendly judges that will issue ridiculously irrational opinions just to come out in their favor. So let's start with the specifics.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania, the margin of victory now for Biden, which is not a victory, it's a fraud, is 69,140 votes. The reality is that we are now at a count of 682,770 ballots, for which we have affidavits that there was no inspection of that ballot at the time that it was entered in the vote. It was a mail ballot. Mail ballots are particularly prone to fraud. We were warned about that by Jimmy Carter, President Jimmy Carter, and Secretary Baker in a report about a dozen years ago, in which they said that mail balloting is particularly susceptible of fraud, that we should very carefully consider ever doing it, and that it can be taken advantage of.
Well, that's
Justice Souter warned us of the same thing.
You don't have
in
to.
a comment in an election law case. And even the New York Times wrote articles about how dangerous mail-in voting was. And this is the first time we ever did it en masse, and I think we proved that all three are prophets. It's not only susceptible to fraud, it is easily susceptible to fraud, particularly if you have a plan or scheme which sounds eerily similar to what Joe Biden told us a few days before the election, that he had the best voter fraud team in the world.
No.
Well, they were good. I don't know that they were that good because they made significant mistakes, like all crooks do, and we caught them. One of them was pushing out Republican inspectors. Every state, almost every civilized country, even Tanzania and places you wouldn't think of, have rules about inspectors, particularly for mail-in ballots. And why particularly for mail-in ballots? Because they can more easily be defrauded.
Well, you don't have to have any ID on a mail-in ballot. Did you know there was voter fraud in Tanzania? I didn't know that.
Why it's so easy.
I didn't know that.
Well, you fill out an envelope like this. You put usually in New York it would be your assembly district and the precinct in which you're voting. You fill out your name and your address, and you sign it. You then use an inner envelope, and you put the ballot inside the inner envelope. You seal it all, and you send it in. When it's being counted, almost invariably in the United States, up until the mass cheating that went on in this election, a Republican and a Democrat inspector, as well as others, if there are other parties, is allowed to watch the unsealing of this ballot. Used to go on all over America when we conducted honest elections.
This is an important point here, folks.
Because the only time you can ever find out if it's a fraudulent ballot is when it is looked at. The minute you approve this, it's thrown away.
Right, when it's open.
Gone for eternity. The only thing left is the vote. That could have been Mickey Mouse. That could have been a dead person. That could have been not filled out properly. That could have been the same person 30 times.
It's a real point.
That could have been, and all these things have happened, by the way. That could have been nothing filled out. We never know. So, for example, the recount being done in Georgia will tell us nothing, because these fraudulent ballots will just be counted again because they wouldn't supply the signatures to match the ballots. So it means nothing to have counted these ballots because, for example, in Pennsylvania, where we have probably our most precise evidence, 682,770 of these ballots were cast, put in, and they weren't inspected, which renders them ballots that are null and void, cannot be counted, have to be removed from the vote. Why? For several reasons, not the least of which is that was basically only one of two places in the state where it was done. So in the other parts of the state, there was a legitimate inspection of the ballots. So if you have two different standards in different parts of the state, one favoring one part of the state, the other disfavoring the other part of the state, that's a classic violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution. Bush v. Gore being the most recent case that teaches that. That's not the only fraud that went on in Pennsylvania. All of the other frauds carried out in the other states by the Democrat bosses happened there as well. For example, if you made a mistake in that ballot and you lived in Philadelphia or in Pittsburgh, you were allowed to fix the mistake. But if you lived in what would be considered more Republican or Trump parts of the state, you were given no such right. One of our plaintiffs, Mr. Henry, cast an absentee ballot, and he failed to put it in the secure envelope inside. He just put it in open, naked. That ballot was
naked.
Cast aside because it was invalid, because that breaks the privacy of the vote.
Right.
In Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, if they noticed that there wasn't an inner envelope, they'd contact the voter and allow him to vote again. Or if he didn't fill it out completely, or if he made a mistake and didn't sign his full name, he was allowed to cure it. There is no such provision under the law of Pennsylvania. The Democrat Secretary of State made that up in order to maximize the votes in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh and to minimize the votes in the other parts of the state. Clearly illegal, clearly voter fraud, easily provable, hundreds of witnesses, maybe thousands. We have, to give you another example, we have 17,000 provisional ballots cast in Pittsburgh. Do you know what a provisional ballot is? Provisional ballot usually happens this way, and about 15 of the 17,000 happen this way. You walk in and you say, I'm here to vote today. Oh, Mr. Giuliani, you already voted. I did? I don't remember voting. Oh, yes, you cast an absentee ballot. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. So why does that happen 17,000 times in Pittsburgh? People walked in thinking actually 15,000 to be precise. Why did it happen 15,000 times that people in Pittsburgh walked in to vote and they had already voted according to the Democrat election machine? Did they forget? That many people with bad memories in Pittsburgh? Or is the following correct? That as witnesses will testify, they were instructed by the Democrat bosses when they had a ballot in which there was no one registered, just assign it to somebody. Just assign it to Rudy Giuliani. So when maybe Rudy Giuliani won't show up to vote. And if he does show up to vote, we'll give him a provisional ballot. That is what we call circumstantial evidence of the fraud. The direct evidence of the fraud are the people who will testify that, in fact, that's what happened to them.
All right, we have to step in. First, obscene profit time out of the day. We get the idea of where this is going. Rudy's giving a summary of the kind of fraud that they have found in various places and examples of it. We'll take a brief break and come back, and we'll figure out how long we want to stay with this, and do all that behind the scenes. Get back here as soon as we can. Sit tight, folks. Rudy Giuliani, conducting the press conference as it's begun, is now going through details of individual workers and how they were threatened and how they were ordered to cheat. They're willing to have their names used in some cases, in other cases not. He doesn't want to use their names, afraid of what's going to happen to them. He's explaining that now. We'll rejoin him.
And coach them for whom to vote. Completely illegal. She will testify to that. I don't know. Biden's people can cross-examine her, but you can't just throw it away. Gee, there's no evidence. Next time you say that, you'll be lying. Because there is evidence. By the way, this is public. You can all get it. It's attached to the complaint in Costantino versus the city of Detroit. Then she was instructed by my supervisor not to ask for a driver's license or any photo ID when a person was trying to vote. Don't ask for identification. Why would you not ask for identification? Because you knew that a lot of people not entitled to vote were going to come in and early vote. Because you knew that illegal immigrants were going to be allowed to vote. You knew, if you lived in Philadelphia, unless you're stunad, that's an Italian expression for stupid, unless you're stupid, you knew that a lot of people were coming over from Camden to vote. They do every year. Happens all the time in Philly. It's about as frequent as getting beaten up at a Philadelphia Eagle football game. Happens all the time. All the time. And it's allowed to happen because it is a Democrat, corrupt city. And has been for
beat
years.
Up at an Eagles game?
Many, many years. And they carried it out in
Santa
places
Claus.
They could get away with it. They didn't carry it out in neutral places. They didn't carry it out in Republican places. They didn't carry it out where the law is respected.
That's true.
They carried it out in a corrupt city where the district attorney releases criminals. en masse.
They didn't even do it in
Which is why it has so
Tanzania.
much crime. She also said, I observed a large number of people who came to the satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for and submitted an absentee ballot. So she observed a lot of people voting twice.
Okay, we have another obscene profit timeout. We can't miss these, ladies and gentlemen. We've missed enough of them while I was gone. We'll come back and we'll keep assessing this as it goes. Okay, we're going to keep it here at the EIB network. We gave you an idea of what's going on. Rudy Giuliani laying the groundwork here. There are other people at this presser. The female lawyer, Ms. Ellis, is there. We've got Sidney Powell waiting in the wings. And Joe DeGeneva and Victoria Tensing are there. I assume they're all going to speak at some point. Rudy is laying the groundwork, and if and when, what Rudy's doing is presenting the evidence. The media, the left, all saying, you guys got any evidence for this? You're just out there, you're swinging away, you're flailing away. What? No, there's all kinds of evidence, and Rudy's going through it. Now, here's the thing. You and I know everything Rudy said. We pay attention to it. We follow it. It's like every day in America in the news. We know what our side believes and says and is uncovered. The people that don't watch or listen to conservative media don't know. And in that interest, CNN, MSNBC are not carrying this press conference. Fox is, the One America News Network is. I assume Newsmax is, but I don't think CBS, ABC, NBC are. So the evidence that Rudy is divulging, and it's real, and it's been known for a while, is still going in one direction. So what has to happen here? At some point they get to laying the groundwork. We're going to get to specifics. We better get to specifics of how many votes Trump has been cheated out of. How many votes did Biden illegally get rewarded to him or awarded? In this recount, in this post-election night shenanigans, how many illegal votes ended up going to Biden? How many ballots only had his name on them? Trump has an 800,000 lead on election night. Now he's down what, I don't know what the number is, but it's unbelievable to lose 800,000 votes after they stop the count. So we need to get to the hard numbers of how many votes we're talking about here, because nobody is going to take this any further than it is unless there's evidence that there's enough of this fraud and chicanery to overturn the result. And that's the task the president's lawyers have here. And if that kind of information ends up being divulged, and we will break off and rejoin the press conference. If that kind of data is the kind of data I think that Sidney Powell would be in charge of presenting. So if we get to her at some point, we'll go back. I want to resume where I started the program today, and just briefly to review. In 2015, I predicted that Barack Obama, when I read he was not going to leave town, he's going to live in Washington, I said, okay, purpose of this is to protect the agenda. He's going to go on television every day or every chance he thinks he needs to take. If the new president is undermining his agenda, is unraveling his agenda, is like replacing Obamacare, he's going to go on TV, rip the new president, try to protect his agenda, try to protect his accomplishments in unprecedented ways. The media is going to cover it. The media is going to praise Obama to the hilt. New president's going to have unprecedented forces arrayed against him like this. I've said we've never seen this before in America. And it turns out I was right about it all the time. I thought I was wrong. But my prediction was that Obama would do all this in public. So I said, well, you can't get them all right. It turns out my instincts on this were so right on the money. Everything that's happened these past 4 years, the Russia hoax and coup, the impeachment, the effort to get rid of Trump, the refusal to accept the election results, the lack of a peaceful transfer of power that has yet to take place, by the way, from 2016. All of this was Obama. Every last bit of it was directed by Obama. From Brennan to Clapper to the people at the FBI who were in on this, the Comeys and so forth. Everybody was taking their orders from Obama. We should have been able to put it together. You go to the January 5th meeting in the Oval Office where Obama and Comey and Clapper set up basically a sting operation for the next day at Trump Tower in a meeting with Trump between Clapper and Comey and Trump. That's where they set Trump up by telling him the story of the golden showers, the prostitutes hired to pee on the bed Obama had slept in. That was to get that story in the news, get the dossier in the news. That was directed by Obama. Should have known. But it turns out everything, every bit of the sabotage, every element of the attempt to ruin Donald Trump began with Barack Obama. The evidence comes from the great writer Lee Smith. Publishes the story at the Epoch Times. The headline, "Behind the Scenes, Obama Never Left." Folks, I got to tell you, my instincts on this were just 100% right on. And I thought I was wrong these last 4 years because Obama didn't go public with it. And I knew that he was involved in somehow. I had no idea, and I should have, how intimately involved he was. He has been pulling all of the strings for the last 4 years on everything. Now, I said it would happen, but he did it under the radar. I thought he would do it publicly. Well, the truth is, the drive-bys allowed him to do it under the radar. So they're deeply involved, too. They allowed him to do it under the radar. They took orders. It was Obama that was giving the media their marching orders. It was the media that permitted Obama to do all of this under the radar and anonymously. Let me give you some pull quotes from the story. I love doing that as a summary of these things that I share with you. One pull quote, "Biden is an avatar for a third Obama term," meaning he's a placeholder, just like Hillary was going to be the third term of Obama. Well, now it's Biden. So in a sense, Obama never left. He's the first president in a century to stay in Washington after the end of his term, and he was the first to interfere in the peaceful transfer of power. Another pull quote, "In political circles," now some of you may say, "Rush, we know all this. You should have known." Stick with me on this because Obama is the answer to all roads lead to Obama. And he gets away with acting like he was disinterested, like it was all beneath him, which is part of the trick. You know, he's carrying himself like an ex-president. Trump's beneath him. Trump this, Trump that. Obama's got bigger things to do, like do interviews with Obama for Apple TV and then go out there and save Europe and the trains and all that, whatever. He's got much, much more important thing to do. When, in fact, he was doing everything he could to undermine the elected will of the American people. In political circles, it was no secret that Obama had thrown his support behind Kamala Harris. She's ambitious and appealing, and without any strong ideas or opinions of her own, she poses no threat to him. She was Obama's ideal heir, but primary voters found her fake and unlikable. She was out of the race in early December. So he'd have to find a way to restore her, but in the meantime, he needed a horse for the primaries. It was Obama running a Democrat primaries, and it was Kamala Harris that he wanted to be the nominee, but she couldn't get a vote. She couldn't get any money. She got out before a single vote was cast. But they found a place for her later. Another pull quote. In the first week of March, Obama's establishment pushed out Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Pocahontas, pushed them out of the race to consolidate support behind Biden. It was Obama who made sure that Mad Amy, Mayor Pete, and Pocahontas got out of the race in order to consolidate support behind Biden. In the age of coronavirus, a politician who was obviously disoriented reflected the state of the country, i.e., Biden. A voluntary shut-in was the perfect role model for Americans forced to stay home, and Obama made sure that they did. Obama made sure people stayed home and had a Democrat nominee that they could relate to. In April, Obama told Democrat mayors on a conference call not to reopen their cities until coronavirus testing and monitoring were available nationwide. Shutting down the economic activity of major U.S. cities would put limits on any economic rebound and thereby hamper Trump re-election chances. So even the lockdowns in these Democrats, it was Obama ordering them. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't Cuomo. It wasn't de Blasio. They were the order takers. So the mayor of Portland, the governor of the state of Washington, the governor in New Jersey, Andrew Cuomo, all of them were taking their orders to shut down and stay shut down from Barack Obama. Whether or not Obama is now able to consolidate his legacy, the fact is that he's already carved out his singular place in U.S. history. He is the first president who interfered in the peaceful transfer of power for 4 years. And it's on his behalf that a rolling coup has pushed a nation to the edge of the abyss in order to remake that nation in his image. Lee Smith, behind the scenes, Obama never left. The Epic Times, a brief break, and we'll come back. And we're back. Sidney Powell is now at the microphone explaining her part in this. We join the press conference now.
The constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out. We have one very strong witness who has explained how it all works. His affidavit is attached to the pleadings of Lynn Wood in the lawsuit he filed in Georgia. It is a stunning, detailed affidavit because he was with Hugo Chavez while he was being briefed on how it worked. He was with Hugo Chavez when he saw it operate to make sure the election came out his way. That was the express purpose for creating this software. He has seen it operate, and as soon as he saw the multiple states shut down the voting on the night of the election, he knew the same thing was happening here, that was what had gone on. Now, the software itself was created with so many variables and so many back doors that can be hooked up to the internet or a thumb drive stuck in it or whatever. But one of its most characteristic features is its ability to flip votes. It can set and run an algorithm that probably ran all over the country to take a certain percentage of votes from President Trump and flip them to President Biden, which we might never have uncovered had the votes for President Trump not been so overwhelming in so many of these states that it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system. And that's what caused them to have to shut down in the states they shut down in. That's when they came in the back door with all the mail-in ballots, many of which they had actually fabricated. Some were on pristine paper with identically matching perfect circle dots for Mr. Biden. Others were shoved in batches. They're always put in a certain number of batches, and people would rerun the same batch. This corresponds to our statistical evidence that shows incredible spikes in the vote counts at particular times, and that corresponds to eyewitness testimony of numerous people who have come forward and said they saw the ballots come in the back door at that time. Notably, the Dominion executives are nowhere to be found now. They are moving their offices overnight to different places. Their office in Toronto was shared with one of the Soros entities. One of the leaders of the Dominion project overall is Lord Malloch Brown, Mr. Soros' #2 person in the UK, and part of his organization. There are ties of the Dominion leadership to the Clinton Foundation and to other known politicians in this country. Just to give you a brief description of how this worked, I'm going to quote from a letter that was written, and I will read that to make sure I get the quotes right. This person was objecting to the United States acquisition of Sequoia voting systems by Smartmatic, a foreign-owned company. I believe this transaction raises exactly the sort of foreign ownership issues that CFIUS is best positioned to examine for national security purposes. It's undisputed that Smartmatic is foreign-owned and it has acquired Sequoia. They keep changing the names as they go along. Different times when a problem comes up, they just create another corporation and call it a different name. But it was a voting machine company doing business in the United States. Sequoia voting machines were used to record over 125 million votes during the 2004 presidential election in the United States. Smartmatic now acknowledges that Antonio Mujica, a Venezuelan businessman, has controlling interest in Smartmatic, but the company has not revealed who all the Smartmatic owners are. According to the press, Smartmatic's owners are hidden through a web of offshore private entities, and that is, in fact, true. Smartmatic has been associated with the Venezuelan government led by Hugo Chavez, which is openly hostile to the United States, and of course, as we all know, communistic and really brutalizing its own people. The system has been continued there by Mr. Maduro and ensured his election. Smartmatic's possible connection to the Venezuelan government poses a potential national security concern in the context of its acquisition of Sequoia, because electronic voting machines are susceptible to tampering, and insiders are in the best position to engage in such tampering. This letter expresses
Attention, EIB affiliates, we are sticking with this through the upcoming commercial break. We are staying with this. The American people need to hear this, and nobody else is covering it.
Are of Venezuelan origin and evaluate Smartmatic's ownership to determine who could have influence and control over these and other Sequoia products and services are important to the national security of the United States. This letter was written to Hank Paulson on October 6, 2006, by Congresswoman Carolyn B. Maloney. Senators Klobuchar and Warren have raised these concerns as recently as December 2019. Why our government has not taken them seriously is beyond my comprehension, unless they have some of the three-letter agencies have used them themselves in other parts of the world. We know that the technology was exported to affect an election in Argentina. That's admitted by our friend who wrote the affidavit about Hugo Chavez and his interest in Smartmatic. Again, in 2006, Carolyn Maloney wrote the Honorable John Snow, the Secretary of the Treasury, about the issues. Speaking of Smartmatic's leadership, one of the Smartmatic patent holders, Eric Coomer, I believe his name is on the web as being recorded in a conversation with Antifa members saying that he had the election rigged for Mr. Biden, nothing to worry about here, and they were going to F Trump. His social media is filled with hatred for the president and for the United States of America as a whole, as are the social media accounts of many other Smartmatic people. There has been widespread use of this. Dominion itself is utilized in 2,000 jurisdictions in 30 states. It has been uncertifiable in multiple states who realized all the problems that it had, including Texas. Experts have described it across the board, from a Princeton group of 3 professors to experts that we have talked to about its end-user vulnerabilities. People can admittedly go in and change whatever they want. They can set the ratio of votes from one thing to another. They can say that A Biden vote counts as 1.25, and a Trump vote counts as 0.75. And those may be the numbers that were actually used here. It's not just the swing states that were affected. The algorithm was likely run across the country to affect the entire election. Like I said, we only discovered it this year because of the overwhelming number of votes for President Trump in the swing states that caused the machines to have to shut down for them to backfill for adding votes. We have evidence of different numbers of votes being injected into the system, the same identical, unique 6-digit number multiple times in at least 2 states that we've analyzed so far, and I'm talking about like 341,542 votes for Biden and 100,012 for Trump. There's no explanation, no logical explanation for the same numbers being injected 20 minutes apart into the machine. The software manual itself, you can download it from the internet, and I would encourage you all to read it because it specifically advertises some of these things as features of the system. Why it was ever allowed into this country is beyond my comprehension, and why nobody has dealt with it is absolutely appalling. The machines were easily accessible to hackers. There's video on the net that it will explain to you how a kid with a cell phone can hack one of these voting machines. There's been no oversight of Dominion or its software. Workers in each county were trained by Dominion, but there's no evidence of any monitoring otherwise. We have testimony of different workers admitting that they were trained how to...
Okay, for EIB affiliates, we're taking our break here at the top of the hour, but we are going to continue to feed down the broadcast line the press conference being conducted here. Sidney Powell will be continued speaking. The American people need to hear this, and I don't think it's being carried too many places. So we now continue the feed while we take the break, and it's up to you affiliates what you want to do. It's your show.
In the trash like you would on your computer with any file, and Biden votes being injected. That's addition to the flipping. I mean, it really happens in 2 ways. There's an algorithm that runs that automatically flips all the votes, and then each operator has the ability to go in, override settings. They can ignore a signature. They can ignore the top line of the ballot. They can go down ballot and select who they want to change the results for. The gentleman who founded Smartmatic, there's video of him on the internet explaining that, yes, at least one occasion, he admits they changed 1 million votes with no problem. Many of the jurisdictions that have had this problem might not have known of the issues, but many did. And I think a full-scale criminal investigation needs to be undertaken immediately by the Department of Justice and by every state's equivalent, Attorney General's office or state investigatory unit, because there's evidence of different benefits being provided to the people who spent $100 million of taxpayer money at the last minute for their state to get the Dominion voting systems put in time for this election in different ways. There's one person that a lawyer told me got, quote, election insurance, meaning that he would be able to make sure he was elected. I'm sure they explained that feature in detail to many people who expressed interest in putting this voting system in. Texas denied certification of the Dominion system in 2019, but there are no doubt issues with the software that Texas did use, unbeknownst to Texas, I would imagine, since they went to great trouble to examine the Dominion systems and reject them. But other software, the source code that does the alterations is embedded, we have been told, in the source code all across the country and all the voting machines. There's no doubt it has been used to alter elections in other countries. We know specifically that Venezuela exported it for that purpose to Argentina and other Latin American companies to make sure that the corrupt rulers who were willing to pay the highest price for being in office were allowed to rig their elections. This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form. And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
How come you're not suing in the Wisconsin counties that use this? Why are you only doing a recount?
And excuse me, that we're not out to the questions at this point. So excuse me, we're not at the questions at this point. My name is Jenna Ellis, and I'm the senior legal advisor to the Trump campaign, and I'd like to just explain now where we've been and where we're at and what you can expect from this process. So what you have heard, I'm sure, in the fake newspapers tomorrow will be one of two things. Either there was not sufficient evidence that we've presented, or we spoke too long. Okay, so what you've heard now is basically an opening statement. This is what you can expect to see when we get to court to actually have a full trial on the merits, to actually show this evidence in court and prove our case. This is not a Law and Order episode where everything is neatly wrapped up in 60 minutes. For those of you who are here in this room or have maybe tuned out in other networks, clearly you've never been court reporters. Trials take time. Putting on evidence takes time. This is basically an opening statement so the American people can understand what the networks have been hiding and what they refuse to cover, because all of your fake news headlines are dancing around the merits of this case and are trying to delegitimize what we are doing here. Let me be very clear that our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity. President Trump has been saying from day one that this is about maintaining free and fair elections in this country. It is not about overturning an outcome. It is about making sure that election integrity is preserved, and every American should want that. If every American is not on board with that, you have to ask yourself why. And if your fake news network is not covering this or allowing you to cover it fairly and accurately, you should ask yourself why. This is absolutely a legitimate legal basis. We have been asked to provide an entire case that generally would take years in civil litigation. I've been a prosecutor. I have tried cases with far simpler facts. One thing happened in a matter of minutes, and it still takes days. And we go through a jury process. This is the court of public opinion right now. We are not trying our case in the court of public opinion, because if we were, we would get unbiased jurors. I would strike 99% of you from the jury, and I would be allowed to because of the fake news coverage you provide. You are not unbiased jurors. And until you step out of your role as a journalist and actually go into a courtroom and you are a judge on a bench that has sworn an oath to be unbiased in our separation of powers, then your opinion does not matter. The facts matter, the truth matters, and if you are fair reporters, you will cover that fairly and appropriately, and you will allow coverage of our media team here and our legal team. That is absolutely shocking that all you cover are around the margins, and I've seen all of you taking pictures right now, and I can anticipate what your headlines are going to be. If you are not willing to talk about the evidence that has been presented.
And greetings and welcome back. It's great to have you with us. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Studies, for everything that matters. I want to go back and jip the press conference. Jenna Ellis is in the process of hammering the media and their unfairness in all of this. We'll give it just a little bit more time here because you need to hear this.
Election law. It still has to go by the U.S. Constitution. But what has happened in this case is that state and local level officials, and all the way up, have changed the rules. That's what the Democrats do. If they don't like the rules, they change them. And they change them at the last minute. They manipulate them. They want to tear down our American system. Our founders were so brilliant that they anticipated this, that there would be corruption, there would be foreign influence, there would be attempts to manipulate the outcome of the election, especially with who they called our chief magistrate. I would encourage all of you to go home and actually read Alexander Hamilton's Federalist 68 and see what he described as an advocacy position to adopt and ratify the Electoral College and the process by which we select our president. We select our president through the Electoral College not because it disenfranchises voters, but because it is a security mechanism for exactly the type of corruption that we are uncovering. And every American should be grateful and thankful that our founders had the foresight to put in those protections and provisions to make sure that your legitimate legal vote is not disenfranchised. That is what we are advocating for. We want to make sure to protect election integrity, and your president, President Trump, we are so proud that he is in this fight because he understands that when he swore his oath of office, he swore an oath to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. That is what he is doing. And that is what we are doing. We are confident that through this multiple pathway to victory, we will get to the actual outcome that the evidence shows. But this is not about overturning an election on our part. It's about making sure that we protect and preserve free and fair elections for all future American elections.
That's exactly right.
If the United States caves to corruption or this type of election integrity,
that's exactly what this is about.
Disaster, then no election will be secure from here on out.
Exactly right.
And we all need to be keenly aware of that.
Exactly
We
right.
are the representatives here that are standing in this gap and defending President Trump and defending you, the American people, at the end of the day. This is ultimately about the United States of America, and we want to make sure to protect and defend that. And as my colleagues have said, we will not back down. We won't be intimidated. President Trump will not be intimidated. You, the American people, should not be intimidated. You, the press, should cover this fairly and should know that this matters to election integrity and it matters to the future of our nation. So we have given you an overview, but recognize this is not a court of law. We will get there, and we have time, and we have constitutional provisions that will step in when we show the corruption and the irredeemably challenged and overturned votes that are absolutely corrupt in all of these counties. It is irredeemably compromised. We will show that, but you have to give us that opportunity. This has been just our opening statement, and we have an opportunity to get there, and we have time, and we will do that. This is the United States of America, and we stand proudly for President Donald J. Trump.
All
Thank
right,
you.
there you have it. That's Jenna Ellis, and I don't know if they're going to have any. Wait! Here's Sidney Powell back at the microphone.
I have gotten multiple emails from people in other countries who watched the same pattern happen there. We have witness testimony that the same things were done in those countries as this was exported from Venezuela and by Maduro and by Mr. Chavez and by Cuba. And of course, we know China also has a substantial presence in Venezuela and substantial interest in making sure that President Trump does not continue in office. This is the consummate foreign interference in our election in the most criminal way you can possibly imagine. It must be shut down. We know, for example, that one of the Dominion's highest level employees or officers went to Detroit himself to man the Detroit Operations Center, where he could watch the votes coming in real time and decide what file folder in the system to put those votes into. That's why you see massive spikes after hours when people were told that all the votes were in and all the votes were counted. Many Dominion employees have already reached out to us to tell us the truth. They are Americans who want to ensure election integrity like we do. I would encourage every Dominion or Smartmatic employee who is fed up with the corruption in this country to come forward as soon as possible, because these are serious federal offenses that I am confident the Department of Justice will be in pursuit of in very short order if they are not already.
Okay, that's Sidney Powell. Rudy's coming back to the microphone now. I want to review what has happened here. By the way, Fox, I'm told, stayed with the press conference the whole time. MSNBC CNN did not. I'm sure the other networks didn't. But, folks, what a story. Sidney Powell just dropped bombs all over the place. For instance, Trump votes were so overwhelming, the number of people who had voted for Trump, that the rigged system, this Dominion system with the Smartmatic software, melted down. It couldn't handle. It couldn't cheat fast enough. It could not overcome the number of legitimate Trump votes. This is why they had to stop everything overnight. This is why they had to stop counting. They had to stop the process because they were losing space, losing time, losing the ability to catch up and stay even with the number of legitimate votes that were coming in for Trump. That's what one of her references, the evidence is coming like a fire hose. You need to imagine this now. The Trump votes, just in the normal counting process, the number of people voting for Pennsylvania, Michigan, and every one of these places that they're now studying, the Trump votes, according to Sidney Powell, who, remember, impeccable reputation. She, at the close of her remarks, had one of the most dynamic, patriotic calls to action I have heard. We're working on getting the audio of that now. So it happened during the top of the hour break. I don't know how many of you heard it, but you must, and you will in mere moments. The Trump votes were so overwhelming, the rigged system couldn't keep up with them. The system designed to cheat could not keep up, so they had to stop the count. Trump was 800,000 votes ahead. They stopped the count. They figure out what they needed. They had to figure two things. They had to stop these numbers of votes coming in for Trump, and they had to replace them with Biden votes. This is probably why so many Biden votes only had Biden's name on them. I imagine if they'd had time, they would have completed these ballots with all kinds of Democrats down the ballot also having been voted for. They didn't have time. They didn't have time. They only had time to put Biden's name on these fake ballots and then feed them into the system. I mean, this was a full hour, if you count Rudy and then into Sidney Powell and Jenna Ellis. It was a full hour of constant, overwhelming evidence. Rudy made a strong case that the fraud is big enough to change the result and that the evidence is clear. Jenna Ellis said, this is our opening statement. We're not taking questions now. This is a legal case. It's going to take time. These things don't happen like Law and Order where you get it all wrapped up inside of 60 minutes. Sidney Powell with the evidence of fraud from the machines. She detailed evidence of communist money from China, from Russia. She made the point that if you want to talk about foreign interference in our elections, then this is where it happened. Not in 2016. This is where it happened. And they have a witness who has explained it all, how it works, the influence of communist money from China, from Russia, to rig the elections. And I think one of the key things I heard, the Democrats and the people running the cheating software, the Dominion software with Smartmatic, I think they didn't expect Trump to do as well as he was, and they had to stop counting. They could not believe Trump was up 800,000 votes in Pennsylvania. That doesn't happen simply because they forgot to count a city. They don't forget to count Pennsylvania, and they don't forget to count Pittsburgh. They were 800,000 votes behind. Remember, these people on the left, the Democrat Party, they believe their own PR. They believe their own buzz. They believed they were going to win this in a landslide. They believed everybody hated Trump. They believed Twitter is America. And they believed that everybody hated Trump like they did. And they didn't care about the rallies. They didn't care how many people showed up at the rallies. They believed that Trump was going to be sent packing because everybody in America hates Trump like they do. And then they saw the number of votes coming in for Trump, but they could not believe it, and they had to stop it. They had to stop the counting. Why do that? Why stop the counting? This is not done. It's never done. Well, you say that, Rush, but they stopped in 2016. Yeah, I know. Same thing. Back then, they didn't have these machines up and running. They were looking. They thought Hillary was going to win then in a big landslide. They weren't prepared for what happened. So they shut the counting down for an hour and a half around midnight back 2016, and they're looking for votes anywhere they can find them. They didn't find them. This year, they took into account what happened in 2016. They had their Dominion software machines from Venezuela, from a company owned and operated by Hugo Chavez, R.I.P. And then you have and Maduro, now his inheritor. And here comes Trump just blowing them out of the water. They had no idea. They didn't expect Trump to be doing as well as he did. 800,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania, unheard of. So they had to stop the counting. Then they had to rig the system, and the system was overwhelmed by the number of Trump votes. The cheating couldn't keep up with the number of legal Trump votes. It just reminds me, I warned everybody, or cautioned everybody on Election Day, show up, vote, show up on Election Day, go, turn out. There's nothing that can replace that. There's nothing that can cheat that out of existence. Live turnout, record turnout, there's no amount of cheating can fix that. This proves this. You couldn't make up the stories that we heard in this last hour. You couldn't make up that much devious garbage if you were trying to. It was astounding. I still can't. The Trump votes were so overwhelming, the rigged system melted down. They had to shut it down. Sidney Powell also said that Dominion executives are now MIA. Their offices are being abandoned and moved. Jenna Ellis hammered the fake news today when it was her turn at the microphone, as well as I've ever heard anybody do it. Chastised them how none of them would qualify for a fair jury because of their bias. None of them would be certified by a judge to ever sit on a non-biased jury, so they don't get to decide this case, that there's going to go to a trial, and they're going to take their time. They're going to do it right because this is about the integrity of the American electoral system. It's not just per se getting Donald Trump elected. It's about the Constitution and the integrity of our system. So why are these executives from Dominion Software and Smartmatic, why are they fleeing the jurisdiction? Why are they now MIA? Why aren't they there defending what they did? They sold their machines to Democrats in voter registration places all over Pennsylvania, all over Michigan, all over Wisconsin. Why aren't they there standing up for their machines? Why aren't they there defending their system? Why aren't they there explaining, no, you guys got us all wrong. Why are their offices being abandoned? Why are people grabbing things from the offices and throwing it in the back of cars and splitting the parking lot, leaving the city? Dominion executives are now MIA. Their offices are being abandoned and moved. And Sidney Powell said that President Trump won this by a landslide and that they are going to prove it. I got to take a brief break. We'll continue right after this. Don't go away. I don't know how many people heard this. Probably not enough. So we're going to remedy that right now. Sidney Powell's closing remarks before she pass the microphone to Jenna Ellis. They're doing Q&A right now. We're following that. We're rolling on it. Anything newsworthy and shocking, we'll have it for you. This is Sidney Powell, 48 seconds, looking the beast, the Democrats, the media, the opposition to Trump, the people that have problems with this country, enemies of America, looking them right in the eye and saying,
"This is stunning, heartbreaking, infuriating, and the most unpatriotic acts I can even imagine for people in this country to have participated in any way, shape, or form." And I want the American public to know right now that we will not be intimidated. American patriots are fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government, and we are going to take this country back. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it, and we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Sidney Powell, in her closing statement, she's doing some Q&A. Let's rejoin this press conference for a bit and see what's happening now.
It affects votes around the country, around the world, and all kinds of massive interests of globalist dictators, corporations, you name it. Everybody's against us except President Trump and we the people of the United States of America.
You've spoken of unleashing the Kraken. Is the country ready for this? I mean, Americans should be astonished at what you're saying here today. Is the country on the verge of an electoral breakdown?
We've already had it. We have already had that electoral breakdown. But the Constitution, as Jenna explains, has provisions in it for how you fix this. And there should never be another election conducted in this country, I don't care if it's for local dog catcher, using a Dominion machine and Smartmatic software. We have got to have an American company that uses paper ballots that we can all verify so every one of us can see that our vote is our vote.
Exactly right.
Requesting recounts in 2 counties that don't use the software at all.
This case is not only about, remember, this case didn't begin with Dominion. This case began, and this case can be proven the old-fashioned way. It can be proven based on just good old-fashioned Democratic tactics that go back to Mayor Daley.
Okay, so there's Rudy. I need to get some things in here as a summary and a review before we go to the bottom of the hour break. Sidney Powell said, "I want the American public to know right now we will not be intimidated. American patriots fed up with the corruption from the local level to the highest level of our government. We're going to take this country back, and we're not going to be intimidated." Rudy said, almost 700,000 ballots in Pennsylvania, 300,000 in Michigan, that they can identify as fake, as illegitimate. If that's true, that would flip both states to Trump. Right now, they have hundreds of affidavits from witness statements attesting to mass fraud. And it took a while. You know, it takes a while to interview people to attach these affidavits. 700,000 ballots, Pennsylvania, 300,000, that's 1 million ballots in 2 states they can identify as illegitimate. Affidavits support that at 4:30 a.m., a truck pulled up to the Detroit Center where they were counting ballots and dropped an estimated 60,000 to 100,000 ballots that voted for Joe Biden only with no down-ticket voting. I suspect this is when they were panicking at the number of legitimate votes Trump was getting. They were blown away by it, and their own cheating software was being overwhelmed by it. They had to come with truckloads of ballots to replace them. A Rush Limbaugh program executing assigned host duties flawlessly, keeping a massive amount of information coming in from all over the place, seemingly easily organized and presentable to you. This is a classic illustration of talent on loan from God. Your phone calls are coming up really soon, folks. Don't think I forgot about you. Just one thing first, another Sidney Powell soundbite during the Q&A. And I want you to think about what she says here in this bite.
In terms of the level of corruption we are looking at here, We have no idea how many Republican or Democratic candidates in any state across the country paid to have the system rigged to work for them. These people didn't do this just to take control. They make one heck of a lot of money off of it. Think about the global interests behind your own news organizations. Think about the pressure being brought to bear from the social media companies to shut down free speech on any challenge to the election. This is a massive, well-funded, coordinated effort to deprive we the people of the United States of our most fundamental right under the Constitution to preserve this republic that we all cherish. It is of the greatest concern. It is the 1775 of our generation and beyond.
She is talking about the integrity of elections. You can talk about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. You get into arguments over which is more important, the right to property, the right to free speech, the right to free assembly, the right to religion. You can have arguments about them all day, and they can be fascinating. They can be trips down, as Robert Bork used to say, an intellectual feast. But in a representative republic like ours, there are votes, there are elections. And it is there where the will of the people is expressed. And if you thwart that, if you render that meaningless, if you take that over and corrupt that and essentially make it meaningless, then you have destroyed the representative republic that exists. You have destroyed the American people in this case. You've destroyed their ability to choose their leaders. You have rendered their votes worthless. You have finally done what a lot of Americans think anyway. They think their votes don't count. If this is allowed to stand, guess what? Nobody's votes count, because the people that cheat are going to be the ones that determine the outcome of every election. That's what she is saying. Think about the pressure being brought to bear from the social media companies to shut down free speech on any challenge to the election. She's asking you to think about it. No matter if you say something about this election that's pro-Trump, you say it on Twitter, you say it on Facebook, they're going to shut you down. They're going to censor you. They're going to say that you are in the areas you're not permitted to talk about, that you're disseminating false information or whatever it is they use to censor you. It is a massive and well-funded, coordinated effort to deprive the people of the United States of their most fundamental right under the Constitution, and that is to preserve it. The most fundamental right we have is the ability to preserve this Constitution, to preserve this republic. And that right has been taken away in this election. They've got the evidence. They are not backing down. They are not going away. They are not going to be doxxed. They're not going to be called racist and be offended and scared and run away. None of that is going to happen, they say. They are in this to fix this. Okay, to the phones we go, because people have been waiting patiently, and I haven't had a chance yet to get to them. So we'll start in Newport Beach, California. This is Craig. It's great to have you, sir. Hello.
Rush Limbaugh, thank you for the rush wave. There was no red wave or blue wave. There was a rush wave. It was your advice of showing up to vote and to break the algorithms. Thank you, sir.
Well, you're more than welcome, sir. I'm happy to have this acknowledged as a rush wave. I know exactly what you mean.
You know, I always wondered how much it cost to rig an election, but I think we're closing in on it. When Hillary Clinton ran for president, she paid $9 million to Perkins Coie for a dossier that probably cost $12. Where'd the other money go? Now I think we might know where it went, is to pay for Dominion. Something to think about.
Yeah, I know. We can sit here, and a lot of people are going to make jokes about it, and that's one of the ways that people choose to deal with it. But look, I want to add something that I started this program out with. Remember who's behind this, folks? Who is behind all of this for the past 4 years to undermine Donald Trump? It's Barack Obama. Barack Obama and his regime, I mean, the people that worked for him, the Susan Rices and the Bidens, and to go, the David Axelrods, Clapper, Brennan, Comey, Hillary, you name it. That is the cabal that is behind all of this. Now stop and think again. The voting machines used to count the vote in American states were made in Venezuela. The software was written in Venezuela by a dictator who asked that the software be created so that he could cheat and never lose. That's what the Democrats bought. The funniest thing I heard all day today, though, the number of legitimate votes for Donald Trump were so many that they overwhelmed the software's ability to keep up with it and cheat. Trump had so many votes, that's why they keep saying that he won in a landslide. 700,000, in some cases 800,000 vote lead in Pennsylvania, and they had to stop counting. Who does that? Who stops the count? They had to stop the counting so that their machines could catch up and keep up, and they couldn't. So what they ended up doing, they've got an affidavit from a witness who said that a couple of trucks, this is in Michigan, showed up at a counting center with a bunch of ballots, tens of thousands of ballots with only one name on them, Joe Biden. No other candidates down the ballot were even on the ballot, just the name Joe Biden for president. They were flooded into the system and they were counted. Here is Steve in Beaverton, Oregon. Welcome, sir. Great to have you with us. Hi.
Hi, Rush. How you doing?
Good, sir. Thank you.
Just to let you know, you're in my prayers, but not just you, but Catherine also. I took care of my dad when he had Alzheimer's, and I know how hard it is for the caretaker. There's a phrase used in healthcare, you got to care for the caretaker because they need to be lifted up too in prayer. So prayers to both of you.
You don't know how right you are. Well, you probably do. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you. So my point is everybody, and rightly so, is focusing on Trump, but what about all the other down-ballot races? If Trump really did win in this great of a landslide and got up, and you mentioned this yesterday, possibly 410 electoral votes, how many of the down-ballot candidates did he take with him? You mentioned yesterday that, there were 27 competitive races for Congress. But what about all the other races?
Well, no, let's finish that. People may not have heard there were 27 toss-ups. The political experts like Charlie Cook told us before the election, 27 races in the House that he said these are toss-ups. The Republicans won every one of them.
Right, but what about all the other ones? If you're voting for Trump, aren't you going, no, I'm sick of these Democrats, and you vote for the congressional candidate and you vote for the senatorial candidate? I mean, how many did we got like what, 10 or 12
no,
or maybe 15 congressional? Did we get 25? Did we get 50? Did we get 75 seats flipped?
It's a great question. No, I got it. It's a great question because we already know that down ballot the Republicans kicked ass. They flipped a bunch of seats in the House that nobody was expecting. It was expected they were going to lose the Senate. They're not going to lose the Senate unless there's a similar kind of cheating in Georgia that's gone on elsewhere. And the Republicans flipped seats in the House and could have flipped even more, is your point. I get your point exactly. How many people voted Republican way down the ballot, way beyond just voting for Trump? It's a great question. It's probably a lot. I think this was probably a landslide election. And there are people, by the way, in the media and on the Democrat side who know this. They know that Trump won this last, and they are stunned. They're not admitting it. They never will admit it. It's probably forgotten, but they have to know it, and it was probably huge. When you're cheating software can't keep up with the legitimate votes coming in, and you have to stop the count. Whoa, folks, that is big.
Rush.
Just got a note. Somebody who watched the entire presser on the One American News Network says, over, I feel like I just got a handful of uppers or something. My heart is pounding from this. These guys are the strike force, Mr. Limbaugh. These guys are the strike force against the drive-bys. They're hammering them out there. Rudy has some female reporter harassing him. He just swatting back. He said, ma'am, you're lying. I'm not going to answer your question. One thing, they're witnesses. Sidney Powell's witnesses, Rudy's witnesses, they, at this point, they don't want to be victims of the media, so the team is not telling anybody who the witnesses are. But the drive-bys, oh, yeah, the drive-bys want to know. The drive-bys, who are there? Who are your witnesses? We want to know their names. What are their names? And Rudy is saying, no way. He said, we're going to prove it in court. He said, we haven't released anywhere near all the evidence that we've got yet. Rudy said to the news media, we're going to prove it in court. They don't like you, the witnesses. They don't like you, and they don't trust you. Sidney Powell again reiterated the turnout for Donald Trump was so overwhelming, it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the system to cheat. It's stunning. It all makes sense when you look at the physical evidence that was abounding out there prior to the election, the numbers of people at the rallies. It was all there to be seen and believed. Then we had the drive-by media every day. No, Trump's going to lose in a landslide. American people are fed up with his tweeting. They're fed up. American people like Trump. He's rude. He's crude. He's a bore. People like Trump. People hate Trump. Trump is going to be voted out. Everybody hears that 4 times a day, 5 times a day for 4 years. They'll be affected by it. But the fact of the matter is, she said again, the turnout for Trump was so the number of votes that Trump got so overwhelming it broke the algorithm that had been plugged into the cheating electoral system. You know, folks, our friends at Boll & Branch, like Boll & Branch, B-O-L-L, bollandbranch.com. Okay, Scotty, New London, Connecticut. Great to have you with us today, sir. Hello.
Oh, Rush, what a blessing, honor, and privilege it is to be on with you, and God bless you, and be well. We love you.
Thank you.
I mean, I just want to know, tell me, am I wrong? Am I crazy? Because I don't feel it out there outside of you, me, and the president, and a small handful. I am distraught about this. I am torn up. My heart has been torn out of my chest. My country is dying before my eyes. My republic. I'm 47 years old. I've loved it unconditionally in my whole life. Up until November 3rd, I would have given my life for it without asking a question for my children, for the country. And now, if Joe Biden gets sworn in, Rush, I'm taking the American flags down out of my children's rooms because that's not who I'm not with it anymore. And if I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong. I'd rather you did. I could have dealt with Biden winning. I could have dealt with Biden winning 49-1. That'd be fine.
But you can't deal with Biden winning by virtue of cheating. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I can't deal with the republic being absolutely destroyed fundamentally, and I don't feel that people are getting that. And maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm overreacting. And I want to know.
No, look. I know what you're saying. You're going through the day. You know what you think happened. You think this election was stolen. You think Trump was winning big. You believe what these people are saying. And yet you don't run into anybody's outraged by it, or not very many. You don't run into people who think their country's being taken away from them. So you're wondering, are you a lone wolf? Are you one of the few? That's, unfortunately, the role a conservative plays. To think he's alone and nobody else thinks like he or she does. Don't worry, sir. You are not alone in this. We will be right
America's
back.
Adult.
Man, oh man, the fastest 3 hours in media is zooming by here today. I had no idea we were going to be carrying so much of this presser today, but there you go. You have to be adaptable. if you're going to be good. Take a break here at the top, and we will be back and continue right after this. Yeah, greetings, welcome back. Great to have you, my friends. Rush Limbaugh on the Excellence in Broadcasting Network. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo, eibnet.us. It's great to have you here with us. I'm looking for somebody number 25, I think it is, and I might put it out of... Yeah, keep number 25 and number 26 standing by. I'm going to be going back to those as the program unfolds. The press conference is now over. The drive-by media is desperate to know who the witness names are so they can hunt them down. Many people on the left after the press conference, there's nothing there. They don't have any evidence. They don't got any hard evidence. There was no hard evidence presented there. That's just a bunch of speculation. Now, these people that conducted the press conference made it a point to say that they are a strike force. They are working on behalf of the American people, the Constitution of the United States. They claim that this is like the opening statement today. This is not the presentation of evidence. That's going to happen in court. The stuff they do in the court of public opinion will be things like happened today. But that they have the evidence, and they gave a preview of it. And again, folks, one of the most shocking things that I heard today, the Democrats all over the country, but particularly in Pennsylvania and Michigan, Wisconsin, didn't have the slightest idea Trump was going to do as well as he did. And so the degree to which they were prepared to alter votes, let's just say cheat, they were underprepared for how much they were going to have to do. And Trump's level of support, the number of votes that came in for Trump, and again, this is in Pennsylvania, but I'm sure it's true elsewhere. Now, that's a Democrat blue state, and Trump was just cruising there, 800,000 vote lead. The number of votes that came in for Trump overwhelmed the software's ability to keep up with it and cancel it out. That's why they had to stop the count at 11 o'clock on election night or midnight, whenever it was. They couldn't keep up. The number of legal votes coming in for Trump in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, other places in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, overwhelmed them. They had to stop the count. And their algorithms and the systems that were written, the Smartmatic software, the Minion system, couldn't keep up with it. That just blows me away. And it actually gives me faith. My feeling, my theory on this election was that Trump was going to win big. All of the outward signs said so. I had some reservations about it. And now it looks like it's being confirmed by these people who have, to me, impeccable reputations, and I trust them, that that's indeed what happened. They were unable to keep up with the legal amount of votes. Sidney Powell points out the Dominion executives, the people that make the Dominion machine in Venezuela, they're now missing in action. Nobody knows where they are. Their offices are being abandoned and moved. Why are they not hanging around? I mean, what a story. Folks, the Trump votes were so overwhelming, the rigged system melted down. And that's why they had to stop counting. And for all these people that say that there was no evidence, there's no hard evidence that everybody has seen, there was a full hour of constant, overwhelming evidence. complete with witnesses who had signed affidavits. So we'll see. Time will tell. I want you to hear audio soundbite number 4. This is Allison Camerata today on CNN. And there's panic at CNN today because they had a poll. And their poll shows that 70% of Republicans think the election was crooked. Now, I want to get to this because our last caller in the previous hour said, Rush, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of alone out here. I'm not running anybody who's upset about this. I mean, if there was this much fraud, and if the American people were aware of it, this kind of fraud, I mean, there'd be people be upset all over this country, be demanding this. I'm not hearing any of that. I said, you're not alone. You're engaged now in the plight of the average conservative. You think you're alone out there. And every other conservative thinks he or she is alone out there, and that's why they're not saying anything. They think they're alone. They also know that if they do speak up, that something's going to happen to them. They speak up on social media. They speak up somewhere. That here comes the Rasputin guy from Twitter's going to be after them. Or the robot butler from Facebook, he's going to end up being after him. So they just, like before the election, other than the Trump rallies, people shut up. But when it came time to vote, look at what they did. So here's your evidence. There's a poll. 70% of Republicans think the election was crooked. CNN's mad to even have to talk about this. Here's Allison Camerata's report on it.
That's Monmouth poll, where they asked, do you think that Biden won this election fair and square? Only 18% of Republicans a week ago, well, even less, a few days ago, thought that. And they think it's due to voter fraud. 70% of Republicans think that. And so it turns out that the blizzard of, specious court cases and the constant repetition of that slogan, voter fraud, has taken root.
70% of Republicans think wrongly that this election was somehow fraudulent. Is create a scenario where we're all chasing Bigfoot. You're doing the opposite of debunking them when you talk about it. You are bunking them. You are laying them out.
Yeah, so that's John Berman and Allison Camerata, and they're complaining about what they do. I mean, for 4 years, these people hammered this lie that Trump colluded and meddled with the Russians in the elections. And they've conveniently forgotten that. And now they complain about people criticizing Obama. You're not supposed to criticize the president-elect. What the hell have you people done for 4 years, where Trump is concerned? Now you're not supposed to criticize the election results. And these Republicans so my point is, the Monmouth poll, 70% Republicans think that there was a lot of cheating that went on. So you see, you're not alone out there. Ladies and gentlemen, go to audio soundbite number 7. This is Jesse Binal. Jesse Binal is on Lou Dobbs Tonight last night. He is, or it's Binal, I'm sorry. I got a pronouncer here. Looks like Binal. He is a Trump campaign attorney. And Lou Dobbs, it seems like it's pretty clearly fraud if you have 500 dead people who are voting.
We have identified thousands of instances of fraud and other irregularities that make it very clear that the result that we got out of Nevada, that the media has been so quick to report, are simply inaccurate. Inaccurate to the point that we now believe that Donald Trump won Nevada once you take out the fraud and irregularities. One of the really amazing things is the Clark County Commission the other day threw out one of the races, and based on admitted instances of irregularities. And if this election wasn't good enough to show that you had an election of a county commissioner, it certainly wasn't good enough to show an election for President of the United States.
That's his point. If you're going to throw out an election because it was fraudulent with a county commissioner are going to rate much above dog catcher when you're talking about the presidential race. Here's Steve Cortez on Newsmax TV, Wake Up America Today. Rob Schmidt is the host. And the question, the amount of votes coming in that only had Joe Biden at the top, didn't have anything on his ballot, down ballot. Did that only happen for Joe Biden? Did you see that much more for Biden than for Donald Trump?
Massively more, and that's such an important point. So in the state of Georgia, for example, there were 95,000 plus Biden-only ballots that were cast. There were only 818 Trump-only ballots cast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, literally just a fraction.
Wow, 95,000 plus Biden-only ballots. 818 Trump-only ballots. Isn't that interesting? Here is 46% of registered voters surveyed said that Trump should concede right away, while another 32% said he should concede if he's unable to back up his claims of widespread fraud. Only 12% said the president should not concede no matter what. 9% didn't know, had no opinion, didn't care. Now, the way I read this is if Trump has solid evidence of widespread fraud, 44% of registered voters say he should not concede. That's 32 plus 12. 32% said he should concede if he's unable to back up, but if he can, then they think he should pursue. 32 plus 12, 44% think that Trump should not concede. Given the 2-point margin of error in this poll, that's kind of dead even. This headline is total BS. 46% of voters say Trump should concede immediately. That's not what the story says. It's not what the polling data says, but it's an example of the kind of stuff that is out there. Now, I want to share with you, this is an analysis piece from Julie Pace at AP today. Julie Pace, a frequent panelist on the Fox News channel, along with many panelists from the Washington Post, a few out there from the Nuevo Order Times. I just want to read it. She's used to be the bureau chief at AP. She may still be, I don't know, but she writes analysis pieces. She has graduated from just flat-out reporter. Reporter is where you put your opinion in and hide it. An analyst is where you put your opinion in and you promote it. Here's how her piece, with the headline, "For Trump, sowing post-election chaos is the goal." For Trump, sowing post-election chaos is the goal, all right? Here's how her piece begins. President Donald Trump is trying to turn America's free and fair election into a muddled mess of misinformation, specious legal claims, and baseless attacks on the underpinnings of the nation's democracy. Are you kidding me? We've just gone through 4 years of that, Julie, led by people like you. And you're still doing it. You're still trying to undermine the 2016 election. You're still trying to tell people that Trump was illegally elected. You turned a free and fair election into a muddled mess of misinformation that you were disseminating. Now, this is amazing. She says the resulting chaos and confusion that has created isn't the byproduct of Trump's strategy following his defeat to Biden. The chaos and confusion is the strategy. Trump was minding his own business. He ran for office, 2016. He wins. Then what do, Julie? You and your colleagues immediately start taking away from him. You accuse him of being a traitor, a Russian agent. You claim that he stole the election from Hillary Clinton. You claim that he was working for Vladimir Putin. You claim that he colluded and meddled with the Russians. You created chaos and confusion that is still permeating the American electoral system. But now it's as though none of that ever happened. It's only just now happening in the aftermath of this election because Donald Trump wants chaos. And get this next paragraph. Trump's blizzard of attacks on the election are allowing him to sow discontent and doubt among his most loyal supporters, leaving many with the false impression that he's the victim of fraudulent voting. That won't keep him in office. Biden's going to be sworn in on January 20th, but it could both undermine the new president's efforts to unify a fractured nation and fuel Trump and his unify a fractured. I got to stop. Unify? You people don't know the name of the word unify. You don't know the definition of it. You've been trying to drive the people of this country apart for 4 years. Biden's out there saying he wants to unify too. He and Obama have riven this country to shreds in the past 4 years. With the help of people like you, Julie Pay. This is outrageous what you're writing here. Trump's blizzard of attacks on the election. How about your blizzard of attacks on the election, the 2016 election, which are still happening? You even tried to impeach the guy over it. A fake, phony, $32 million unnecessary investigation that wasn't even an investigation. It was an attempt to plant spies in the campaign to create chicanery so they could then accuse him of meddling with the Russians. Trump didn't do any of the stuff. None of the things that he was accused of, he didn't do any of it. You all did. Now you come along and say that he's sowing discontent and doubt among his loyal supporters, leaving many with the false impression that he's the victim of fraudulent voting. He's the victim of fraudulent counting, Julie. That's the key. It's like Joseph Stalin said, I don't care who votes. I'm paraphrasing. I don't care who votes. I don't care how many times anybody votes. I don't care anybody. I care about who counts the votes. That's what you guys are doing. Trump is not accusing it fraudulent voting, although that's what this system does. But this is fraudulent counting. Anyway, you see how... Oh, got to take a break. Just saw the clock. Be back there just a second. Is always at work. Right, my friends, go ahead, admit it. You are addicted to this show. EIB, airborne phenomenon spread by casual contact. You get it, you're cured. All right, here's Ashley, Hanover, Pennsylvania. Great to have you on the EIB network. Hello.
Oh, my gosh. Rush baby dittos and MAGA prayers from the People's Republic of Pennsylvania.
Thank you very much.
Formerly the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Rush, I spent 4 years in high school eating lunch in my car so I could listen to you, and I'm 36 now, so I want you to know that I'm praying for you and Catherine, and I love you. You're not just my guiding light, you're family.
Well, thank you. I really, we both do appreciate that more than you know.
Two quick things. So I'm from PA, and we all kind of knew that the fix was in when we woke up Wednesday morning. I personally know maybe 10 to 15 registered Democrats who voted for the very first time in their life for President Trump this last election. So nobody here is buying these numbers. And the second thing is, since you're always right 99.8% of the time.
Almost always right. That's right.
Almost. What are the odds that the Supreme Court will hear this evidence? And what coverage, if any, do you believe that they're watching or listening to? And do you think that they have to hear this ultimately for the election to be overturned?
That's going to, as far as the court, yes. The Supreme Court's going to have to be the determinant here. And for them to take the case, it's a high bar. There's going to have to be overwhelming evidence that these people would prevail, meaning there's going to have to be overwhelming evidence that a whole lot of votes really were changed, enough to significantly change the outcome. I talked yesterday. I don't think the court really wants any part of this because of separation of power. Some of them do, but it's going to be evidence-based. And, yeah, they're watching this. They're human beings. You grab, you got audio soundbite number 27 standing by. All right, here, this is after the press conference that we just carried some of for you and analyzed all of it for you. And after our take on, I want you to hear Fox News and their take on this. It's the White House correspondent Kristen Fisher reporting on Rudy Giuliani and the Trump legal team press conference.
Well, that was certainly a colorful news conference from Rudy Giuliani, but it was light on facts. So much of what he said was simply not true or has already been thrown out in court.
What happened to we report, you decide? Sorry, I slapped myself. I guess I'm heresy here. That's too bad. Certainly a colorful news conference from Rudy. Light on facts. So much of what he said was simply not true or has already been thrown out in court. Folks, there's something else that happened in this. And TMZ is already making fun of Rudy for it. For some reason, Rudy was sweating profusely during the press conference. I don't know. The air conditioning may not have been working. Who knows? But anyway, sweating profusely. And then, at some point, streaks of black began to stream down the jowls and the cheeks of Mr. Mayor. And people say, Rush, what's that? People sending me email. What's that, Rush? What's that on Rudy's face? It's Grecian Formula 16 or whatever. It's hair dye. I didn't know Rudy dyed the hair. When you have as little hair as Rudy and I have, being vain about it, I don't understand. But Rudy apparently uses hair dye? Hair coloring? I guess and the sweat globules amassed there on the side of Rudy's cranium, and they just started streaming down the face. They got on the shirt and the collar. So TMZ's out there making fun of that. So, and that's what. Things like that happen, and that's what the drive-bys are going to focus on. Here's Ruben in Long Island. Back in New York we go. Great to have you on the EIB network.
Oh, thank you so much, Rush. Oh, my gosh. Amazing to talk to you. How are you?
I'm doing very well today. So I get worn out in about the last half hour of the program. Other than that, I'm doing well.
Okay, so we're going to keep it easy. I'm a rabbi in Long Island, also a teacher, and you should know that me and students were praying for you, and we really wish you the best. Me and my wife, we actually listened to you for like 20 years, and I let you know we like the political comments. We like the technology. We know you love Apple. I'm telling you right now, my Apple 5 has been going for 2 hours already on hold. Amazing. I wanted something you said before was that you don't think the courts are going to take it up unless they think there's going to be a practical difference, that it can make a difference in the election. They won't take up the case. And don't you think? I was thinking possibly we should push for it anyway, because with Trump's legacy, of course, with the Jerusalem, putting the what's called the embassy in Jerusalem, and the funding historical colleges, black colleges, and the economy and the wall. Don't you think this would be the greatest legacy? I hope he wins, but if he loses, this would be the greatest legacy to transform America by actually bringing back the integrity of the elections.
What are you asking me and all that?
I mean, you said you don't think they're gonna move forward unless they think he could actually win in the court system. So, is there any way they let's say Trump wouldn't win, let's say he wouldn't get the amount of votes, but still they should go in the court system, just keep pushing and through the courts, just talking about the fraud and taking care of it.
Wait. You're asking me if a court will take the case anyway, even though they don't know, because they got to do it anyway because Trump's legacy is important?
Not they shouldn't do it because Trump's legacy is important. Rudy should keep pushing, and everyone should keep pushing. We shouldn't say, oh, just because he's going to lose, we're going to stop fighting in court.
Well, no, the Supreme Court is going to say they have to have a high bar here. The Supreme Court doesn't take they get 10 cases they're asked to take, and they throw out 9 of them.
You're right, but even the Supreme Court should take it up, even if he's going to lose the election, but just to deal with the fraud that's been going on in the country and in the election system. Because if Trump campaign could prove it even in some states. Hopefully
let me ask you a quick question. Are you of the impression the Supreme Court does what it does for the betterment of America to save the Constitution? The Supreme Court does what it does because it's important to Trump's legacy be surviving even if Trump loses the election?
That's what we would hope.
That's not how the court operates. That's not how they think.
Uh-huh.
That's
Okay,
not
well,
how.
what-
That's not. That's
So
not.
you think they're only going to take it up? They'll ignore it if it won't benefit. If it won't
No,
change
no.
anything practically.
I don't know what they're going to do. I'm wild guessing here. I know that when I speak, it sounds like I'm speaking with ontological certitude. But in this case, intelligence guided by experience, there has to be, for the court to take the case, they have to be convinced it's worth their time. And the objective of the case is to overturn the results as officially tabulated. Big deal. They better have the evidence to do this. The court's not going to waste its time. It doesn't have the time to waste. The Supreme Court does not sit there and decide we're going to do this so the Republic survives. We're going to do that so the Republic... If they did, then John Roberts wouldn't have done what he did with Obamacare. I'll tell you what this points up, this call. This call, one of the biggest problems we have in this country, and there's no fixing this anytime soon. The Supreme Court is looked at, 9 people. Let's look at it. 9 people are looked at as the final straw. 9 people in this country have been granted the power by the American people. Whatever they say is what is. And that's just too bad. The idea that this or any other case will be determined by 9 people in black robes. And there's a reason for this, folks. There is a reason for it. There's a reason why we are so screwed in so many ways. There is a reason why unelected regulators have so much power. There is a reason, and it is that our elected officials punt. They avoid the controversial things so that it doesn't hamper their reelection. Elected officials are happy to have regulators write regulations on who can build something where and who can't. They can say, I had nothing to do with it. Well, you're my congressman. You got to fix it. I'll do what I can. But I had nothing to do with it. I didn't write the law. Well, this law is punishing me, Mr. Congress, and I voted for you. I'll do what I can, but that's the standard refrain. That's happened in the court system as well. You've had a number of look at I think it was campaign finance reform in George W. Bush at the administration, and they wouldn't come out one way or another. They just decided to wait for the Supreme Court to rule on it. And what happened? Supreme Court said that they ruled against the Bush administration's preferences on campaign finance reform. So now we got people, the Supreme Court, Rush, they need to care about the Trump legacy. I'm sorry, they don't. The individual judges do. Don't misunderstand. You got some there who voted for Trump, some who didn't. You've got people on the court that like Trump, others who don't. You've got people on the court who hope Trump succeeds, others who don't. But you'll never get one of them to admit that that has anything to do with the way they do their jobs. And for the most part, they'll be telling you the truth, especially the judges on the conservative side. But there's not a one of them thinks that the purpose of the Supreme Court is to protect the Trump legacy. However, John Roberts, the Chief Justice, no doubt thought and believes that it's his job to protect Obama's legacy. And you remember how mad you got when that happened. John Roberts, the Chief Justice, rewrote Obamacare to make it constitutional when it wasn't. And why? Why do you think? He didn't want to be the white justice. that made the first African-American president's signature legislation unconstitutional, it wasn't going to happen. And we were fools to think that he would. We thought he was a judge first. We thought he was a justice first. We thought he was a constitutionalist first. Turns out he's a woke, cancel culture aware guy. And he didn't want to be canceled, and he didn't want to be woke. He didn't want to be berated for taking away the first African-American president's health care plan. Didn't matter, constitutional, unconstitutional, it wasn't. He wasn't going to do it. And he wasn't going to let anybody else do it. And further came out and said it's not our role. It's not our role. The American people elected Obama. He should get his legislation. So we made it constitutional. I mean, that's what. Well, why won't they do that for Trump? Why won't they do that for Trump? Question answers itself. Look, I got to take a break, folks. I'm out of time. Sit tight. We're coming back. Welcome back, Rush Limbaugh and the EIB Network in the fastest 3 hours in media. I had a great piece here by Victor Davis Hanson I wanted to get to, but I didn't get a chance, and it's I'm not going to be able to squeeze it in before the end of the busy broadcast day. So it's going to go on the stack of dead stuff that hasn't made it all week. And look, tomorrow's Friday, and I'm going to get this stuff all in tomorrow. You know what? It's going to take no show prep. If I do show prep of stuff that happens, say, between 3 o'clock today and noon tomorrow, then it's going to overshadow the stuff that I got waiting here in the dead stack. And I got to get to this. There's so much good stuff in there. Victor Davis Hanson's piece is called The Trump CT Scanner. Donald Trump has forced elites to reveal to the nation what they were and perhaps had always been, and the resulting penetrating imagery showed their own malignance. It's a great piece analyzing the elites, the deep state denizens, and so forth. So we'll get to that, I promise, tomorrow. It's a great Jason Whitlock column that I also want to get to. You know, most people would not go through the day without having access to your credit card. Use my name, save 25%. David in Rochester, New Hampshire. Great to have you on EIB Network. Hello.
How are you doing, Rush? It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Your wife every single day, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
Anyway, Rush, on October 7th, Nancy Pelosi held a press conference, and it was a last-minute press conference, so she didn't have the coverage I think she wanted. At this press conference, she talked about things that were not relevant to anything at all, except to say, tune in here tomorrow, because I'm going to make an even bigger announcement. Same location, same time, same bat place. At this next one, and I wanted to hear this, so I tuned in, she talked about the 25th Amendment. Now, what's interesting about this, Rush, is it wasn't being talked about by anybody. Yeah, there were modifications that they agreed that they might need to make because of Trump's incident with COVID, but it wasn't being talked about. During this press conference, she talks about the 25th Amendment, and she made sure we understood something very important. This had nothing to do with Donald Trump. So why is she talking about it then? It dawned on me that night exactly what she was doing. So that night I wrote like a 2 or 3 page article and posted it on my website, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this until yesterday. I heard you touch on it. I'm like, great, Rush has got it. Go, talk about this. It's a soft coup, Rush. Everything they're doing is to put Kamala Harris in office.
Exactly. They're going to get rid of plugs. Isn't going to serve anywhere near a first year.
But no one's talking about it. This is exactly what they're doing. It's so obvious. It's not even close to transparent.
Why would they talk about it? Why would they alert people? Why would the plugs don't even know it?
And that's why the press is not talking about it.
That's
because
right.
I'm sure they've been promised exclusives when it happens. Look, there'll be exclusives. Rush, you and I are not the only people that see this.
Well, I've mentioned this in all fairness a bunch of times, but this is how they get a radical left kook in the White House. They know they could never get one elected, but this is how they're going to do it, and we are going to rue the day.
How does he...
Get this. Fox News is now urging, Dana Perino is urging Dominion Software to sue Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell. Man, oh man. We'll see you back here tomorrow, folks.